I'm joined now by, I think, one of the few people who can say they've not only been a Dalek, but played the Doctor, which, as I say, is a unique claim amongst all sorts of other interesting supporting artist work and Doctor Who work. So I'd like to introduce Philip Roy. How are you, Phil?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you coping with lockdown?
Not too bad, thank you. Just sort of plodding on, really. And you okay with it all?
Yeah, not too bad. I've grown a stupid moustache just because. What else can you do? You know, I grew a beard and then just thought, oh, I've had enough of this now. It's getting itchy, so I thought, well, I'll just keep a big '70s porn star moustache. So,
Yeah.
sort of things you do to keep sane, isn't it?
Yeah, something to be working on anyway.
Yeah.
But I suppose a good place to start in terms of Doctor Who was your first experience of the show, which was The Bells of St. John alongside Matt Smith. How was that getting the part? Was that quite exciting?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, part of the reason I got into background work acting was to get on Doctor Who. You know, once I realised I was in Cardiff, so that was ideal, and there was a company that you could join and would book you as background artist. That was the obvious route for me to do. So it took a while. A couple of times I think I got booked, and then the schedules changed, so then I got released and never rebooked. So it was frustrating knowing that you might have done a Doctor Who and then you didn't. But then I eventually got on booked for the Bells of St. John, and the character, or what I call the character, we were playing unconscious passengers on a on a jumbo jet. I don't know if you remember the scene, but I think there was some sort of signal sent out which made this plane about to crash, and everyone on board was unconscious. So basically there was a lot of pretending to be unconscious while the plane is crashing, moving, so a lot of this sort of thing. So the back of my head, that's all you saw, like most of the passengers. But I mean, it was great, you know. Matt Smith was there, Jenna Coleman was there, and we filmed it in RAF's in Athens. They've got a full-size aircraft jumbo with the wings removed, and I think I got a feeling they train for stuff like how to exit the aircraft, because there was a smell of smoke there, so I'm guessing that they would fill it with smoke and test, you know, how people react and that sort of thing. I'm just guessing anyway. But great to finally tick that box after so many years, you know. Yeah, it's good. But Doctor Who's quite hard to get on. It tends to be that once you've got onto it and done an okay job, they tend to sort of trust you and think, okay, we'll use that person again. But I know that there's lots of people that have been background artists for years who've done everything but never got on Doctor Who. It's a strange one. It's a strange one. Yeah.
So once you'd got that first part, you were then in the Caretaker, or almost in the Caretaker, should I say?
Yeah, I think obviously there was one in between, wasn't there? The big 50th. But the Caretaker, yeah, again, I got booked on that. And we were booked to play parents in the parents' evening scene, walking into the gym. But I think because of where I was in the queue, just as I was coming through the door, they shouted "cut." So I knew I wasn't really going to get seen on that. But it was a nice one. It was only a day filming on that, and I got to meet Peter Capaldi, even though he wasn't actually in that scene. I'm sure you've heard this about Peter Capaldi before, is that he tends to sort of hang around the set, and he comes in and says hello to people because he's a very friendly guy. So he just walked around saying hello to the crew, and was passing me, so caught my eye and came up, shook my hand. So that was nice.
But as you mentioned, between those two parts was the 50th, and
yeah,
as a fan, it must have been very exciting to be involved in it in some shape or form.
Yeah, absolutely. the funny thing about that was the agency rang me up and said, "Are you available next Wednesday?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, okay, we've just got to check a few things. We'll get back to you." And then about a day later, they rang me and said, "Are you still available?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Okay, the only thing is they want you to shave your sideburns because, you know, I'm quite attached to them." So I said, "Yeah, what is it?" And they said, "Oh, it's Doctor Who." And obviously I knew that they were filming the 50th at that point. So immediately I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. And they said, "Okay, you're going to be doubling for someone." So I thought, "Oh, great." So in my little Doctor Who mind, I started thinking, well, doubling. Oh, well, now I've heard the Zygons are back, and obviously they need to have a copy of someone back in the spaceship so they can. So I thought, oh, perhaps it's something to do with that I'll be, you know, the back of an actor who's walking. So told to turn up to BBC Rothlock Studios a certain time. So went in, they said, go into the cafe, which is where most people meet. And then bumped into some other well-known SAs, Mickey Lewis, Scott Stevenson, who I knew. I said, "Oh, you're doing Doctor Who?" Yeah. So sat down, said hello, made my introductions. And then they said, oh, do you know which Doctor you're playing? And I said, "Excuse me?" They said, "Oh, didn't you know we're all doubling for one of the previous Doctors?" I was like, "I can't believe this." So, I mean, very quickly we sort of worked out, obviously there's an older chap there, so he was going to be playing William Hartnell. And then you looked at the height in the build. And I thought, well, I'm only 5'8", so it's either going to be Patrick Troughton or Sylvester McCoy, I'm guessing. And yeah, it turned out to be Sylvester McCoy, which was great. So basically, the way it worked was we went into hair and makeup because we had to be fitted with wigs, and then we had to wait till 5:30 until the Doctor Who experience ended, because we were actually using the costumes from the Doctor Who experience. So we had to wait till that finished so they could port over the costumes. So that was interesting. I mean, we're all in the dressing room putting on these costumes and thinking, you know, Sylvester McCoy actually wore this. So hugely excited. And then they put little letraset coloured dots on our faces at certain points so they could key in a photograph of the original actors, which anyone who's seen the 50th special will know that scene at the end where they're all stood in a semicircle looking up at supposedly Gallifrey. And that's how they did it. So it's our bodies. If you look closely, you'll see, I think the Troughton Doctor doing this with his hands, which Pat obviously did. So it's not a static photo. You know, we were actually there live, but obviously they superimposed the photographs of the original actors. And then from the back, if you look from the back, they actually change. It's quite a weird one because you see them from the front and they're in a certain order, and then they change from the back and we're in a slightly different order. We move around slightly, so I was stood next to someone different from the back. So yeah, but great, you know, just a wonderful experience. You know, I think Matt Smith and David Tennant were already filming the end of something, so we were just told to sort of shuffle in and stand in the corner. And of course, at some point, David Tennant looked over and saw, you know, because obviously he's still a massive Doctor Who fan, saw all the previous Doctors in the costumes. And just this massive grin came over his face, and he started nudging Matt Smith and started pointing. And yeah, it was just delightful to them, you know, when we came on set. David Tennant, I mean, normally there's a strict no photographs, you know, no cameras on set, no photographs. But of course, David Tennant gets a little bit more leeway. So he was there snapping away. Matt Smith enjoyed it as well. And then they brought John Hurt on, just a legend of acting. So, I mean, what a great day for people like me and Mickey Lewis and Scott Stevenson, you know, to play to play those parts, you know, just a dream come true, really. You know, I mean, if you're lucky if you get on Doctor Who, and you may not even get on camera, or you may just be a huge crowd. But wonderful to be on it and say you've been a part of it. But you know, how many people could say they've played Doctor Who on screen? It's, yeah, I still have to pinch myself now. It's wonderful. Yeah.
So would that have just been one evening's worth of work then?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we would have been called for around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then by the time we got through hair and makeup, just hanging around then, really waiting for the costumes, and then we put on the costumes. So I suppose we would have started filming around 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock, and then the filming in total would have taken not more than half an hour, really. Couple of takes. But the great thing was, Nick Hurren, who's a very nice director, I've worked with him on Sherlock after that. He had this idea to pipe in some very sort of gentle mood music, and obviously there's a lot of dry ice, and so we were told to look up at this point on the set, which is just basically a black wall, and imagine that we're looking up at Gallifrey, not to move about too much because obviously they needed to key the photographs on. Yeah, and it helped. It helped that I think quite a few of the background artists doing these parts knew about Doctor Who and knew the different Doctors. So, like I said, you know, a chap called Richard Roberts was playing the Pat Tratton character, so he did the thing, you know, twiddling, and I grabbed my lapels, you know, in a sort of slightly Sylvester McCoy way, you know, just because I knew that's the sort of thing that the McCoy character would do, you know. So I think little touches like that helped, which we weren't really given any direction from that point. Just basically stand there, look up at Gallifrey, be slightly wistful. But I think the music helped, and obviously you've got this huge crane camera coming in closer. You obviously can't look at the camera, but you're aware of it coming in, you know. So you do get that sort of feeling of what you're trying to give in terms of emotional, even though it's not going to be your face, but just body language and things like that. And obviously they're centering more on Matt John Hurt and David Tennant. So, you know, it's more for them that what they're giving to their performance. But obviously the music helps, you know, and it's not often that happens because most stuff is post-production music and things like that. But obviously they could film it silent because there's no dialogue. So yeah, great. Yeah, just a really great experience. And then luckily, about a week later, I got another phone call and they said, Phil, would you play, I don't think they named the parts, but would you play a crowd scene? And it turned out to be the scene of the attack on Arcadia. So I played an Arcadian then, and we filmed that at Mam Hillard Industrial Estate, which is Pontypool Way. So an old series of buildings which they don't use anymore. I think they train. I've passed there when they've been training riot police because they've got a big outdoor area. So yeah, it does get used for filming. I filmed an episode of Casualty on there. So that was great as well. And luckily, it was a night shoot, but while it was still light, they picked about 5 of us to play Arcadians who survived. So there's a scene in the 50th special where you see Arcadians emerging from the rubble after the Dalek attack, and I was one of those guys. So you get to see my face a little bit more on that, because obviously on the attack of Arcadia, it was just mayhem. People running about, explosions going off, Daleks, lasers, but really great. I mean, we must have run down that little track about 25 times, you know. But I've talked to Danny Hargreaves, the special effects guy, on another series about it, and he still says that was probably the most exciting thing and one of the things he's most proud of, because there was such a lot going on, you know. And those explosions, those big petrol explosions, were big. You know, they were. I mean, obviously we were in no danger because these guys are experts. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. That was, yeah, it's just fabulous. And that was 2 days. That was 2 days night shoot to get all that. Yeah. So you would start filming as soon as it went dark, really, and then we would get released about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Because obviously it wasn't just us. They had to film the stuff with. Actually, the on the nights that we were there, the doctors weren't there. They used doubles, because you see them from the back standing. So they didn't. Those weren't actually David Tennant and Matt Smith and John Hurt. They used body doubles for that. Yeah.
But to say, as well as playing the Doctor and another Time Lord, you've played their arch nemesis, the Daleks.
Yeah.
And that was probably a slightly longer involvement with that episode as a Dalek operator.
Well, the funny thing about I was booked to be on Asylum of the Daleks, and then literally, I can imagine how I was cited, but I didn't. Yeah, it was only a couple of days before I knew it was to play a Dalek. And then they rang me up the night before and said, "Oh, sorry, Phil, we've got to cancel you because there's a height issue." Apparently, as you know, in the old days, the smaller you were, the better, because the Dalek's quite small. But they said, "Oh no, you're not tall enough." So I was massively disappointed for that. And then about a year later, when I had to reapply for the background agency, I found out that they put my height down as 5'6", when I'm actually 5'8". So I missed out on all those Dalek episodes, simply because they got my height wrong. But I think the caveat to that is that the reason I got the Sylvester McCoy role in the 50th was because on paper our heights matched. Now I've met Sylvester and had a photo with him, and I'm about 2 inches taller than Sylvester, so I'm guessing he's around 5'6". So I think that's the reason that I got the Doctor role. So yes, I missed out on some of the Dalek roles, but then I got to play Doctor Who. So swings and roundabouts. But yeah, eventually they did for the two-parter Capaldi episode, Magician's Apprentice, and which is familiar. Obviously, they had all the old Daleks back, and they called me and said, "Would you do that?" So yeah, so and basically when we went in to the set, which was amazing, they picked some of the normal Dalek operators for the bronze Dalek, the modern Daleks, simply because they'd used those Daleks before. But basically, for the older Daleks, they said, choose which one you want to, So it was like a mad scramble. So I knew in my mind, I thought I'd like to be in, the Dead Planet Daleks, because they are quite classic. But because of the size, they're slightly smaller. Obviously, the classic Daleks are smaller than the new bronze Daleks. They are quite cramped and they're hard to move. I think the Dalek that I was in was one of the Andrew Beach Daleks from the exhibition, and they were static props. And I think the crew had adapted them so they could be movable Daleks. But the problem with that is when you get the new modern Daleks, anyone knows how you move the Dalek. You basically sat on a seat and you pedal with your feet. Well, in the newer Daleks, you've got the whole of the perimeter of the Dalek to move your feet, so your feet can move quite a way, so you can get some good quick movement. Well, with the Andrew Beach Dead Planet Daleks, literally there was a small hole cut in the bottom, so literally your feet could only move about that much. So it was very hard to move them because you couldn't get any traction. So they said, right, can you just move across from one side of the studio to the other? So I moved at a snail's pace. And they said, can you move any faster? I said, well, no, not really. I can't move my feet. So they basically sort of moved me into a corner where I was monitoring machines a bit more like that. And then the other problem with that Dalek, because they were up against a time scale, was normally inside the Dalek you've got like a stick which you can pull down to make the eye stalk go up, and you can also turn the head with this stick. Well, the Dalek I was in didn't have the stick, so if you wanted to, and they wanted us to move the head so you could get some movement. So if you wanted to move the head, you had to sort of scrunch up and scrape your shoulder and move the head with your hand, all the while pressing the button for the lights and then trying to move the gun stick and, you know, move the Dalek as well. I don't know. Have you ever seen the Vulcan who gets killed in the transporter accident in Star Trek: The Motion Picture? And when you see him in the transporter, he's like this. That's what it was like. And the other problem with it is they make you wear almost like a balaclava, like a sock with two little eyes cut out, you know, obviously in the wrong place, so you can only get one eye moving. So you're in this thing which is hugely cramped. You're trying to do four things, you know, with two hands, and then you think, no, I need to move the eye sock. So then you have to sort of scrunch and scrape your shoulder up and do that, and then you have to scrunch it back and move the gun. There was a point which I thought, even though I've always wanted to play a Dalek, there was a point which I thought, I'm not sure I can stand this anymore, because it was so claustrophobic. And I just had to sort of go into this sort of Zen state where I calm myself down and just constantly breathing, and eventually I just sort of overcame that panic. But to be fair to the crew, anytime there was more than a couple of minutes where you wouldn't be filming, they would take the top half off so you could get a little bit of air. And Andrew Beach, I obviously knew of Andrew Beach, but I didn't know who he was by sight. And he was helping, because that was his Dalek. He was helping me climb out and get in. And yeah, a lovely guy, just really helpful on the day. And it was just a great experience. We did our scenes with Missy and Clara. I didn't do any scenes with Peter Capaldi, but as I was saying, he does love to come on and have a nose around. So while I was in the Dalek, he came like a kid in a sweet shop, because, you know, he saw all these Daleks. He came up to me and said, "Oh, who's in there then?" I said, "Oh, hi Peter, it's Phil." And he said, "How you doing, Phil? You're right." He said, "You look great. You look like Mary Quant," you know, because of the 60s thing. So yeah, just a really nice experience, And then the second day I did on it, I think, was filming the bit where the Daleks are all going haywire because of, and all cracks appear, obviously CGI cracks in the floor. So we just had to move about a bit more as if we were turning and in a state of flux and being affected by whatever was killing the Daleks. But by that time, they had actually put the stick in. So so it was a little bit easier. I didn't have to scrape my shoulder so much. So I could just do it from there. And yeah, just a lot easier. But yeah, that's the last thing I've done on Doctor Who, really. Yeah, it's just the luck of the draw, really, whether you get called to do anything. I've not done anything with Jodie, with the Jodie Doctor. I did a self-tape audition for a couple of lines on the Tesla Edison episode, but that's about it. Yeah, but great fun, you know. Always good to do.
On the note that, you know, you also had a fantastic time being a Doctor and a Dalek. Hopefully you're back in the next series at some point. I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Phil. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you.
Oh, it was nice to talk to you, Alex.